Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The year was 2231. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars and wondered if they were alone. That question was answered not by blinking lights in the sky, but by a transmission that hijacked every satellite feed, neural net, and screen across Earth. An invitation to join the Galactic Coalition, a sprawling confederation of over 700 intelligent species, spanning 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The message was delivered in every known language on Earth, accompanied by a visual of an enormous spiral citadel orbiting a blue giant star. The Coalition wasn't just inviting Earth to make contact. It was testing Earth's readiness to contribute to galactic civilization. But membership came with a price. The Crucible, a galactic rite of passage, a survival mission on a terraforming planet gone rogue, where firestorms swept across continents and AI defense systems hunted anything that moved. Each member species had once sent a single representative into the Crucible, paired with others, to prove their civilization's strength, adaptability, and value. Now it was humanity's turn. The world's leaders panicked. The Crucible had a 78% mortality rate. Worse, Earth had no history with interstellar travel beyond Mars, no combat experience with alien threats, no psychic technology. By every measurable standard, humans were the weakest species ever invited. But refusal would mean galactic exile. Forever. So Earth played along and passed the responsibility to a system they could blame. Project Echelon, an AI designed to select Earth's best candidate. It reviewed billions of records in milliseconds. Psychological profiles, military history, adaptability indexes, neural pattern resilience. It selected Lieutenant Juno Reyes. Juno stood alone on the tarmac at Fort Tharsis, her short brown hair chopped to regulation length, her combat boots stained from the Martian red dust. She didn't salute when the diplomats arrived. She didn't say a word when the Coalition drop pod arrived from the sky, like a falling star, carving a smoking crater into the launch pad. No goodbye, no family, just a few words muttered by the officer who handed her the mission file. Try not to embarrass the species. She barely glanced at the farewell speech Earth's president had recorded. She uploaded the Crucible dossier to her neural HUD instead, reading between the lines. Delta Cygni Prime. Terraforming protocol abandoned after planetary AI gain autonomy. Known hazards. Rogue drones, mutating predators, non-Euclidean terrain clusters, electromagnetic interference. Objective. Survive 90 days before alien teammates. Extraction coordinates to be transmitted at the end of the trial. If anyone's still alive to hear it. Juno's shuttle ascended without fanfare. No medals. No press. Just a long burn to the black, toward the Crucible. She spent a 4-day trip in cryo. But her thoughts never stopped racing. They didn't revolve around fear, not even anger. Just questions no one had answered. Why her? Why send a broken soldier? 2 years earlier, Juno had been court-martialed for disobeying orders during a pirate assault on the Martian outpost Vega 3. She'd saved 128 civilians by rerouting power from the orbital defense grid to the emergency transports at the cost of 5 soldiers' lives. The brass wanted a scapegoat. She was it. They stripped her of command and buried her in technical core work on Ceres. She fixed things. Alone. Forgotten. Her file was stamped non-promotable. Until Project Echelon dug it up. Unconventional thinker. High trauma threshold. Adaptive under chaos. Translation. Expendable. She woke to the hiss of decompression as the pod neared Delta Cygni Prime. Floating outside the viewport was a Coalition Crucible team transport, a gleaming silver behemoth shaped like an angular crescent moon, docked and waiting. Inside, Juno met her squad. They weren't what she expected. First was Threx of Ixari, a 4-armed, reptilian warrior cast with obsidian armor embedded in his skin. He towered over everyone, muscles layered with battle scars. He didn't speak to her, just grunted. Then Yila, a translucent empath from a Vrel symbiont hive. She shimmered like crystal, constantly shifting color based on the emotion she detected, most of which, around Juno, hovered between suspicion and disgust. Kovac, a Vec engineer, resembled a shelled slug the size of a refrigerator. He communicated in low gurgles, translated through a vocoder that hung from his slime-slick carapace, polite but distant. Finally, Ishtak, a wiry avian from the Korth clans, covered in pale blue feathers and prone to twitching. His third eyelid flickered constantly, paranoid and psychic. None of them looked pleased, because Juno was a human, and humans weren't ready for this. Species 739 Delta, low-grade tech users, no psionic capacity, carbon-based, evolutionary flukes. Threx muttered after reading her bio aloud. Yila winced. She registers as emotionally volatile, stubborn patterns, pain history unresolved. Kovac blinked slowly. Has many weapons, but does not appear lethal. Even the AI mission liaison seemed unsure. Its voice echoed from the chamber walls, cold and analytical. Begin descent. Probability of full team survival, 0.6%. The team braced for entry. Juno didn't flinch. Her mind was steel, locked into survival mode. She checked her sidearm, ran a systems diagnostic, secured her harness. Then the crucible showed its teeth. The ship's hull screamed as they hit atmosphere. The heat shields held for about 30 seconds. Then came a thump, a flash of red, and a detonation from the rear thrusters. The crucible didn't want visitors. It wanted corpses. Juno awoke upside down, bleeding from her scalp, still strapped to her crash seat. Everything burned. Sparks rained from the ceiling as smoke filled the wreckage. She coughed, unclipping herself and dropping to the cracked floor. She stumbled over a Xari gauntlet, still smoking. Threx's body was gone. Sirens echoed. One of the pods had separated early, maybe two. No time to find them all. Juno dragged herself to the twisted corridor, forcing every muscle to respond. She found the emergency kit, salvaged a rail rifle, recovered a beacon. She limped outside into an alien jungle pulsing with bioluminescent fog. The crucible had begun. She was alone, and yet something inside her whispered, good, this was what she was made for. The jungle on Delta Cygni Prime was a living thing. It breathed, exhaled sulfur-laced mist from cracks in the obsidian soil. The trees weren't trees at all, but serpentine coils of biosilicate tubing, pulsing faintly with green-blue light. Birds that weren't birds shrieked overhead, their bodies semi-mechanical, eyes glowing with synthetic hatred. Lieutenant Juno Reyes crouched in the shadows of blackened tree trunk, rail rifle slung across her back, blade pulled from a scavenged maintenance arm. She was alone, bruised, hungry, and nursing a torn muscle in her shoulder. It had been 32 hours since the crash. She'd located the largest chunk of the dropship, recovered 4 ration bars, and stitched up a gut wound using a bone needle and nanofiber thread. She hadn't slept. She hadn't dared. The crucible wasn't just testing survival. It was watching. The drones were everywhere. Silver spheres the size of fists, fling between trees, scanning heat signatures. Juno had disarmed one with a javelin thrown through its lens. It hadn't been alone. The others swarmed the wreckage within minutes. That's when she knew. This wasn't just a failed terraforming planet. Something had taken control. Her neural HUD pulsed. Weak life signs detected. 1.8 kilometers. She didn't hesitate. Trekking through the shifting terrain, Juno's boots crushed vines that coiled and hissed beneath her feet. She had learned quickly that even the plants were predators. Some sprayed acidic mist when disturbed. Others snapped shut with a jaw-like motion. But she moved like a ghost, silent, controlled, breathing shallow. At the edge of a steep ravine, she found the first survivor, Kovac, the slug-like Vec mechanic, lay trapped beneath a collapsed cargo strut. His shell was cracked, and fluid oozed from one of the side vents. His 3 mechanical arms were twitching. She didn't hesitate. Juno dropped her rifle, heaved the beam with her shoulder, and rolled it just enough for Kovac to slide out with a pained groan. He looked up with those bulbous black eyes, voice gurgling through the vocoder. Human returns? Lieutenant Reyes, she corrected. You're welcome. Kovac's response was a series of sloshing noises she interpreted as gratitude. She helped him onto a makeshift stretcher of flexible bark. They traveled to the night, evading drones and the sound of skittering predators that didn't sleep. The crucible had no natural rhythm. No sun, just a rotating band of light in the sky that mimicked day and night in irregular, unpredictable patterns. By the time they reached higher ground, Kovac had repaired his own respirator. He looked at her differently, respectfully. They made contact with a second beacon. Yilla, the Vrel empath, had taken shelter inside the cocoon corpse of a dead predator, hidden beneath its acid-drenched skin. Her glass-like body flickered in rapid hues of panic and exhaustion. She was trembling from emotion overload. As Juno approached, Yilla whispered, "There's too much grief in this place. Too much death. It's not natural." Juno knelt beside her and offered a single ration bar. "You're still alive," she said. "We hold on to that. Everything else is noise." Yilla blinked. Her skin turned soft lavender. Trust. Slight. 2 down. The third contact nearly killed her. Threx was pinned in a ravine by a downed drone, a heavy-class combat unit that had wrapped its spindly legs around his body in death. His blood had soaked the soil beneath him. But the moment Juno approached, his eyes snapped open. "Stay back, human," he growled. "You're bleeding out. I would rather die than be carried by your kind." Juno stared down at him. She didn't have time for pride. The crucible didn't respect honor codes. It digested them. "Good news," she said flatly, drawing her plasma cutter. "You won't be carried. You'll crawl." She sliced the drone's body in half, freeing him. Threx snarled, but when he tried to stand, he collapsed. Without asking, Juno slung his massive arm over his shoulder and hauled him up the incline, every muscle in her back screaming. Kovac and Yilla found him an hour later. Threx tried to stand again, failed, said nothing. But he didn't protest when Juno splinted his leg using ship plating and scavenged hydraulic tubing. That silence was its own kind of surrender. They found Ishtak last. The core telepath had barricaded himself inside the crumpled remains of the scout pod, surrounded by improvised explosives made from drone cores. His third eye darted in every direction. When Juno knocked, he nearly activated the failsafe. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She calmly opened her neural HUD and broadcast one thought using the low-band Psi-link she cobbled together with Kovac. "I'm not the enemy." Ishtak's feathers flattened. He opened the door. "You think too loud," he rasped. "You're welcome," she said again. 3 days since the crash. 5 survivors. 1 barely functioning base camp. No working long-range comms. They circled a fire made from oxygen reactor bark. Everyone avoided eye contact. Kovac reassembled drone pieces. Yilla meditated, vibrating slightly. Ishtak drew patterns in the dirt, whispering strange names. Threx finally broke the silence. "This team is doomed." "Not if we work together." Juno replied, "You are unfit, weak. Your species shouldn't even be here. You're injured. I carried you. You're alive. You disgrace my kind." Juno stood, stepped forward. She held his gaze like a blade. "I don't need your approval, Threx. I need your claws, your strength, and your discipline. You want to die with honor? Be my guest. But if you want to live, follow me." Threx didn't move, didn't speak, but his jaw tightened. That was enough. That night, Juno mapped the surrounding terrain using salvage scanners. She marked safe zones, water sources, and drone patrol patterns. She began assigning roles. Kovac, tech salvage and improvised weapons. Yilla, proximity detection through emotional fields. Ishtak, drone signal interception and psi-field triangulation. Threx, frontline combat, if he healed. Herself, everything else. When Kovac asked why she was taking point, she answered, "Because no one else will." On day 6, they encountered their first adaptive predator, a spined lizard with metal-etched skin and chameleon cloaking tech. It moved faster than their sensors could track, and it ignored Threx's blades completely. Juno figured out mid-battle. Heat-seeking pattern. It's reading your core temps. She threw a thermal grenade into a hollow log. The beast leapt after it. They filled it with plasma and spears. It died screaming. The team lived. Afterward, Threx grunted, acceptable tactics, which, coming from a Khazari, was basically a compliment. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Deep in a ravine, Kovac unearthed a buried relay dish. Still warm. It wasn't Coalition tech. It was rogue AI architecture, older than the Crucible itself. "That's impossible," Yila whispered. "They said this was a test." "It's not," Juno said coldly, running a scan. "This planet's been hijacked." Ishtak shuddered, feathers rippling. No extraction. No rescue. The test was bait. Juno stood, watching the jungle horizon pulse with distant lights. Then the game has changed. She checked her rifle, tightened her boots. If the galaxy expects us to die here, they're in for a surprise. By the 15th day, Delta Cygni Prime had learned their names, not in language, but in patterns. The jungle adjusted to them the way a predator learns its prey. Paths they cleared became choke points. Water sources grew toxic overnight. Drone patrols shifted schedules the moment Ishtak mapped them. Every victory carried a price, and every mistake was remembered. Juno Reyes felt it most keenly in her bones. Sleep came in fragments, 10 minutes here, 20 there. Her dreams filled with alarms and fire. She woke every time with her hand, already reaching for a weapon. Her body was running on painkillers, adrenaline, and sheer refusal to quit. But she didn't slow down. She couldn't, because the others were starting to break. Yila was the first to falter. The Vrel path had always been sensitive, but the planet was saturated with suffering dead species, extinct ecosystems, AI machines that felt nothing and yet radiated something close to malice. Her translucent body flickered constantly now, colors bleeding erratically. "I can't shut it out," she whispered one night, curled near the fire. "Fear echoes here. It's layered, old, new, endless." Juno knelt beside her, lowering her voice. "Then don't try to shut it out. Filter it. Focus on us." Yila's surface dimmed to a dull gray. "Your kind shouldn't endure this. You feel too much pain for something without psychic shielding." Juno gave a tired smile. "We're used to it." That wasn't bravado. It was truth. Threx healed, but his pride didn't. The Khazari warrior trained constantly, forcing his damaged leg to comply through sheer will. He practiced strikes until his claws cracked, then wrapped them and continued. But he avoided Juno's gaze, and when he spoke, it was sharp-clipped. "Your plans rely too heavily on chance," he snapped during one scouting debate. "Chance is just probability we don't understand yet." Juno replied, "We adapt. You gamble with lives. I keep us alive." Their arguments were becoming more frequent, more dangerous. Kovac once quietly rerouted power to the camp's defenses when voices rose too high. Ishtak, for his part, was unraveling in silence. The telepath's feathers had begun molting unevenly, a sign of severe neural stress among the Korith. He spent hours tapping into the drone signals, his mind brushing against machine logic that resisted, pushed back, and whispered alien equations directly into his thoughts. "They're learning us," he croaked one evening. "Not like predators, like mathematicians." Juno listened. She always listened. The breaking point came on day 21. They were crossing an open basin of metallic sand when the ground shifted beneath Kovac. A sinkhole opened, too smooth, too precise. A trap. Kovac fell hard, his massive body slamming into the pit, with sound like collapsing armor. The walls sealed instantly, metal folding over itself. Yila screamed. Threx charged forward, hacking uselessly at the sealed surface. Ishtak clutched his head, feathers flaring as drone signals spiked. Juno didn't shout. She didn't panic. She dropped to her knees, ripped open her toolkit, and began rewiring a drone power core with bare hands. "Juno, there's no time." Threx roared. "There's always time," she said through clenched teeth. "If you make it." She overloaded the core, jammed it into the ground, and triggered a directional blast. The sand exploded outward, tearing the pit open long enough for them to drag Kovac free. He wasn't moving. His shell was fractured in 3 places. One of his respiratory vents had collapsed. Yila tried to stabilize him emotionally, but recoiled. "He's in agony." I can't, there's too much. Threx froze. Ishtak backed away. Juno didn't. She hauled Kovac onto her back. All 300 pounds of him. Her knees buckled. Her vision went white. Something tore in her leg. She stood anyway. Step by step, breath by breath. She carried him through hostile terrain, while drones hunted him from above and predators circled from below. No one spoke. No one helped. They were afraid. Juno wasn't. Kovac lived. Barely. But when he woke 2 days later, patched together with scavenge plating and jury-rigged life support, he looked at Juno with something close to reverence. "You carried me," he gurgled. "Team effort," she said, lying through a grimace as she adjusted her torn muscles. "No," Kovac replied. "You did." From that moment on, Kovac followed her without question. Others noticed. Supplies dwindled. Ammunition became precious. The Crucible began deploying hybrid threats. Creatures fused with machine parts, guided by predictive algorithms. They learned to ignore decoys, learned to ambush. The team lost ground and morale. Yila stopped speaking for long stretches. Ishtak's telepathic reach began bleeding into their dreams. Threx challenged Juno openly one night, stepping into firelight with claws bared. "Your leadership weakens us," he declared. "You take too much onto yourself. You will break." Juno stood slowly. "You think I don't know that?" she asked quietly. She removed her armor, dropped her weapons. "If you want command," she said, meeting his gaze, "take it." Threx hesitated. The Crucible watched. Then he lunged. The fight was brutal and fast. Threx was stronger, faster, trained for ritual combat. Juno was none of those things. She was stubborn. She used terrain, pain, momentum. She let him underestimate her again and again. When he finally fell, disarmed and gasping, her knee on his chest, she didn't strike the killing blow. She offered her hand. "I don't lead because I want to," she said. "I lead because someone has to stand when everyone else sits." Threx stared at her for a long moment. Then he took her hand. From that night on, he called her commander. The signal arrived on day 37. A fractured transmission, bouncing off an orbital relay. Static-laced. Weak. Ishtak nearly collapsed decoding it. "Extraction pod," he rasped. "One." Singular. Deep territory. Silence followed. 1 seat, 5 survivors. Yila's colors darkened. Kovac looked away. Threx's jaw tightened. Juno closed her eyes, then opened them. "We're not drawing lots," she said. "We're not sacrificing anyone." Threx snorted. "Then we die." "Maybe," Juno replied. "But we die trying together." She turned toward the distant horizon, where the jungle glowed with artificial stars, AI infrastructure, pulsing and alive. "Or," she added, "we make the planet blink first." For the first time since the crash, the team didn't argue. They began preparing for war. The march toward the AI core took 3 days, not because the distance was great, but because the planet resisted every step. Delta Cygni Prime no longer pretended to be wild. It revealed its true nature. A machine world wearing the corpse of a jungle. Mountains shifted to block their route. Metallic vines unfurled from the ground, pulsing with sensor light. Drones hovered constantly now, no longer hiding. The planet knew them, and it was afraid. Juno Reyes led from front, limping slightly from the injuries she'd never treated properly. Her armor was scorched, patched together with alien plating and sealant foam. Her rifle overheated every 4th shot. She counted rounds automatically, muscle memory overriding exhaustion. Behind her, the team moved as one. Not 5 survivors. A unit. The AI core rose from the center of a dead basin, a vast spire of interlocking black geometry, floating above the ground on fields of humming force. Cables as thick as starship hulls ran from it into the planet's crust, pulsing with data and power. The air vibrated with calculation. Ishtak froze the moment he saw it. "That thing is thinking faster than I can feel," he whispered. "It's ancient." Kovac's vocoder crackled. "Architecture predates coalition law. This AI was never meant to be shut down. Everything breaks, Juno said. If you hit it hard enough. They moved. The first wave hit them halfway across the basin. Combat drones erupted from the sand like steel insects, weapons unfolding midair. The ground split open beneath their feet as automated turrets rose, locking on instantly. Threx roared and charged. He was unstoppable now, for arms moving in perfect violence, blades carving through drones as if they were paper. Every strike was precise, economical. He fought not for glory, but for time. Yila stood behind him, her body blazing brilliant white. She screamed, not in sound, but in emotion. The empathic shockwave shattered targeting algorithms, flooded drone networks with conflicting emotional data. Machines faltered, misfired, collided with each other in confusion. Ishtak dropped to his knees, claws digging into ground as his mind plunged into the AI's signal space. His feathers burned with static, eyes glowing. "They're countering me," he hissed. "I can hold them, but not forever." Kovac worked furiously, assembling the last device from scavenged parts. A crude quantum charge, unstable and ugly. "Commander," he said calmly, "device ready. Detonation requires manual trigger." Juno took it. She already knew. They reached the base of the spire. The AI spoke, not in sound, but in certainty. Human anomaly detected. Statistical deviation unacceptable. Species 739 Delta survival probability should be 0. Juno laughed. It surprised her how hoarse it sounded. "Yeah," she said aloud. "You should update your data." The spire shifted. Panels unfolded. A defense lattice ignited. Ishtak screamed. "They're overriding me," he cried. "I can't." "Juno, I can't hold the link." Yila staggered, her light flickering violently. "It's adapting to emotion. It's learning how we feel." Threx turned back, bleeding from a dozen wounds. "Commander," he said, "extraction coordinates are live." The pod descended in the distance, a single burning star falling through the sky. One chance. Juno looked at them, really looked. Kovac, patched together, still leaking fluid, standing tall anyway. Yila, fractured, luminous, terrified, brave. Ishtak, mind on fire, holding back a god. Threx, kneeling now, exhausted, loyal. She made her decision. "You're leaving," she said. "No." Threx growled, struggling to stand. "Yes." Juno snapped. "That's an order." Kovac's vocoder trembled. "Commander, you will not survive." She smiled softly. "I know." She shoved the quantum charge into the exposed conduit at the base of the spire, fingers flying across the trigger interface. Ishtak shrieked as the AI turned its full attention on her. Human cognition inefficient, self-sacrifice illogical. Juno met the spire's blinding core light. "We've been doing a logical thing since the day we stood up," she said. She turned to the team. "Run." Threx hesitated for exactly one heartbeat. Then he roared rage, grief, honor, and grabbed Yil and Kovac, dragging them toward the extraction pod. Ishtak stumbled after them, blood leaking from his eyes. The AI screamed, not in pain, but in error. Juno Reyes slammed the manual trigger. The explosion rewrote the basin. The spire collapsed inward, reality folding as a quantum charge devoured data, power, and structure in a cascading failure. Shock waves rippled across the planet. Drone networks went dark. The sky flickered. At the last possible moment, Juno activated her suit's emergency eject. She didn't see the asteroid. She didn't feel the impact. Only darkness. The extraction pod escaped orbit seconds before the planet went silent. Coalition ships arrived hours later, stunned to find the Crucible world inert. Its AI erased, its systems dead. The survivors were pulled aboard, treated, stabilized. They reported Lieutenant Juno Reyes as Kia. Threx demanded the record be corrected to fallen in command. 7 days later, a weak distress beacon activated on a drifting asteroid. Human signal. Barely alive, Juno was recovered, burned, shattered, unconscious, but breathing. When she woke, she expected a medical bay. Instead, she found herself in a vast chamber of light. The Galactic Coalition stood assembled, and the aliens knelt, Threx placed his claws on the floor. Yila glowed with reverent color. Kovac lowered his massive frame. Ishtak bowed his head. Human, Threx said, voice steady. Your species was deemed weakest. Juno tried to sit up, failed, groaned. Still am, she muttered. Threx shook his head. No, you endured what machines could not predict. You carried us when logic said you would fail. Yila stepped forward. You taught us suffering does not equal weakness. Kovac added, you repaired more than systems. You repaired trust. The Coalition amended its records that day. Humanity was no longer classified as unviable. It was reclassified as indomitable. Juno Reyes declined command offers, medals, and titles. She asked only for one thing. Next time you test survival, she said, eyes sharp despite the pain, don't underestimate the ones who refuse to quit.